Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today. Today's time will be spent discussing how to speak with your child about adoption, and we have some lovely adoptive mom panelists with us. My name is Kim King. I am co-hosting with Libby, and we are excited to bring this presentation to you today and to interact with you, to answer questions. Just a little housekeeping. If you are new to lifetime adoption, then I want to make sure you know how to connect with us directly through our phone number, which is 1-800-923-6784. You can also email any questions to your coordinator, but if you don't have a coordinator, please feel free to email us at adopt@lifetimeadoption.com. Also, if you are super new and haven't filled out your online application, you can do that at lifetimeadoption.com/apply, and there is no obligation with filling out your application. In fact, some of you who may be attending today may not actually be working with Lifetime just yet, but you got this invitation because you had filled out the application online or you had inquired, and so we're very appreciative when families share about themselves with us and allow us to really tailor fit our advice and guidance to you to help with wherever you are in your adoption process. So feel free to fill that out today, and we can give you feedback hopefully very soon to let you know if we can explore a little further, and that's at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. Also, please do follow us on Facebook, join in the conversation, or just observe the conversations happening there. That's at facebook.com/open.adoption, and you can also find the rest of our social media at lifetimeadoption.com, and scroll down, there are links to our social media there. Libby, thank you for setting everything up and getting everything organized with our wonderful panelists today.
Thank you, Kim. This has been a topic always on our hearts, but especially we have seen a lot of questions come up that almost kind of surprised us, because it does seem in this day and age that the more adoption is accepted, not only culturally, but also the more people are starting to share their stories and talk openly about how they are touched by adoption, that we are still a little surprised when people, when adoptive parents come to us years after they adopted saying, how do I open this topic about my child's adoption? And so we really hope that today's webinar will encourage those of you who are still waiting to adopt to kind of prepare now for starting that adoption conversation right from the beginning, as age appropriate, of course. But then also those of you, I see those of you on here who have recently adopted, or maybe you adopted in the last few years. And so hopefully this will encourage you to hear from other adoptive parents and just start creating an open and comfortable conversation in your own family, so that your child knows that they can always come to you with questions, and that you're open to embracing this story together. And one of the things too that stood out as I got prepared with our guests, Wendy and Adele, just this week, is that I think that you'll really appreciate that while they have some tips and some experiences in common, they also are real life parents who are handling things as they come. So it's not like we're going to talk with someone today and they're going to have it all figured out. This is really more what is working for other families, and what can you look for and prepare for and hope to experience as you raise a child through adoption. And before I welcome my guests, I also wanted to share just a brief analogy that one of our directors likes to go to when it comes to parenting in general, but especially because this is why it's so near and dear to our hearts that we encourage all of you to start sharing adoption with your child from the very beginning, is because it's kind of like, well, she compared it to math class, but I like to compare it to school in general. You know, you don't go into kindergarten and then go to the 12th grade. You go kindergarten first, second, third. So each year of parenting, you're equipping yourself for the next year, the next phase, the next stage. And that's the same thing that can happen when you introduce adoption at a baby level, and then it grows, the story grows with the child. And I hope that today's guests will help you all feel a little more comfortable looking forward to that kind of experience. So joining us today, I'm going to bring up their pictures here. Hang on just a second. Here we go. Some of you may have actually heard them share their stories on webinars in the past, And so I'm excited to have them back again today because I follow them on social media and we keep in touch from time to time. And I just think both of these women bring, like I said, a very real approach to how they have just made adoption a part of embracing their whole family story, that each of their children is growing up knowing that they can come to their parents, ask questions, and that they can keep this conversation going on. It doesn't have to be a major sit down, we have to tell you something very serious event. It's just a part of their family story. And so Wendy adopted from us from Lifetime 5 years ago, and then a couple years ago, they had kind of a surprise opportunity come up within their own network, which happens to a lot of people. You know, when you are open about your adoption with others, they often open different opportunities for you to grow your family. So you just never know. But Wendy's joining us from Indiana, and then we have Adele from Mississippi, and she and her husband adopted, well, 9 years ago now, I guess. I think it's been 9 from Lifetime. So Wendy and Adele, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Wendy, let's start with you since your photo's on the left and we can read from left to right. Would you each just give us a brief introduction of yourselves and your families, just so that we kind of have a little backstory on your own personal adoption stories? So let's start with you, Wendy.
Okay, sure. So yes, we adopted Sarah through Lifetime, and she just recently turned 5. Before that, we, had tried to conceive on our own, and we just decided that we knew we could grow our family through adoption, and we met Lifetime, we went with Libby and Heather, and we knew that was the right fit for us. And so, and then our son Benjamin, as Libby said, was kind of like an unplanned adoption. It was through a friend of a family member who approached us kind of out of the blue, even though we knew we wanted to add another child. We really, at that point, hadn't started working on that yet. So anyway, Sarah is 5 and Benjamin is 2.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right, Adele, let's hear your story.
My name is Adele. My husband's name is Chris. We live in central Mississippi and are farmers. Well, he is a farmer. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I try to do as little in the chicken houses as I possibly can. But anyway, we adopted Hayes. Well, we tried for 9 years to have a baby, went through all the avenues, the in vitro, the inseminations, all of that, and nothing ever worked. And a lady that goes to church with us had adopted a little girl through Lifetime. She was about 4 years old. She had adopted her at birth.
In order to ensure quality service, your call may be monitored or recorded. If you wish to not have your call monitored or recorded, please inform your coordinator.
Sorry about that,
We
everyone.
appreciate you holding. Someone will be right with you. In order to ensure quality service.
I'm sorry, everyone. Please hold on a second.
I'm sure for most of us that recording is very familiar.
Familiar recording. Yeah.
Our whole recording.
I'll put a little call out to my fellow organizers. If you're not speaking on today's webinar, please don't place us on hold.
Funny.
Just put it on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, Adele.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I thought my phone hung up on y'all. I didn't know what had happened. Anyway, after we were introduced to Lifetime through a lady in our church who had adopted, so I thought we probably wouldn't get accepted or something. I didn't know. I just filled out the application, and y'all sent us something for wanting a picture and saying that we were accepted, and so then I freaked out, and then I got happy, and 9 months later we had Hayes. So it was a pretty quick thing. Of course, at the moment it didn't seem very quick, but it was a it was a whole lot easier to adopt than have a baby, evidently, because we had him in 9 months through y'all, and he is the absolute light of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, thank you. And he's 9 now. I'm hearing lots of 9s going on. You waited 9 years before you started adoption, then it took 9 months to adopt, and now he's 9.
Well, that must be my lucky number, but yes, ma'am, he is 9. He just turned 9 in January.
And for those of you who follow Southern sports rivalries, I love this photo because you said that you and Hayes you root for rival teams. Is that right?
Right. I'm from Louisiana. I didn't move to Mississippi till I was 22, and then, of course, you know, Hayes being from Mississippi, well, raised in Mississippi, he's a Mississippi State fan, and LSU and MSU are big-time rivals. So, yeah, there's a big rivalry between us, but I still love him.
Oh, yes. So what was really good was I checked for a few questions in our registration before we got started today, and so I popped out a few of the 3, and I thought these are really great places for us to start, because each of you has walked through bringing a child home at birth and starting with stories or just having that open conversation, and now the ages of each of your family's children range. So I think you'll both bring a lot of what's happening now as well as what you already walked through. And so I'm hoping that showing these questions and maybe starting off here might be a great way for us to open up this discussion about how do we talk to kids about their adoption stories. And so I put this one at the top because I think it is a good place to start. How do you explain adoption to an infant or a young toddler? So, Wendy, since you're moving through toddlerhood right now, and maybe have gone through that newborn phase most recently, let's start with how you would answer this question.
Sure, I'd be happy to. You know, when you bring your baby home, there's just so many opportunities for bonding, and you know, they're right there with you in your arms at eye level, and you're on the changing table, you're rocking them at night. And so that's when we started. We just made their birth and their adoption stories, we just made it their bedtime stories. And, you know, that gets you into the practice mode. And so you kind of learn what needs to really, you know, depending on what age they're at, what they really, you know, should hear or should not hear. And it just kind of lets you get to practicing that. And then it just becomes natural. And it's just a great way to start and to get, you know, into the habit. You know, it takes so many days to form a habit. And so we just started early with both of our kids. And we have always talked positive about our kids' birth moms because that's just a loving thing to do.
I love that. And you brought up the other day, you said something that just touched my heart so much, that you said Lifetime taught us to just love her with respect to each of your children's birth mothers. And I do think that is such a gift that modern day adoption offers, is the chance to get to know that child's birth mother, even if it's not extensively, but you at least know a little bit about her. And that if you have that love for her, I think that place of love makes it easier in a way to want to share your child's adoption story. So I'm glad that you brought us back to how you talk positive about her and that it is from a place of love. I think that's so wise. Adele, how about you when you think back? Because I know you said when you were pulling photos that there were stages you kind of had forgotten moving through, but when you think back, what were the ways that you started sharing adoption when Hayes was a newborn, and then certainly through toddler?
Well, when he was newborn, I would just rock him when we would rock, and I always talked to Hayes. I was never, Chris baby talked to him a lot, but I just talked to him, I guess, because Hayes and I were by ourselves in the house all day long, pretty much. And so I would just talk to him, and I always just told him about the day that we found out he was born, and the rush to get to California, because we were supposed to actually fly out the next day, and he surprised us, so we had to get the first flight out of Jackson and fly to Denver, and things were frozen over, and then we had to fly into Oakland and rent a car, and it was like planes, trains, and automobiles, and so I would always tell him about all of that and how excited we were, and when we came home, just the whole big glamorous story, and I just would talk to him about it. It wasn't probably, it wasn't an everyday thing. That wasn't what we talked about every day, but all through his growing up, we just talked about it. And when he got a little bit bigger and could communicate with us, he would always ask about the plane ride. That was pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did it cut out? That was pretty much what, Adele? Oh, I hope we didn't lose Adele. Wendy, Kim had a nice request here. She said, could we get a little sampling of what that sounded like to turn their adoption story into a bedtime story?
Oh, sure.
He just always knew, because we always told him. So there was never, I could never sit down. Remember sitting down with a sit down moment, except for the first time he actually really asked details about his birth mother when he was in kindergarten. Well, in first grade, he asked. But other than that, it was just something he always knew. He just always knew he came from another woman's belly. That was it. That was just simple as that. He told my nephew one day, my little nephew said, "You talk about being adopted like you know what it means." And Hayes was about 4, and he said, "I do know what it means. It means my mama's belly was broken, and I came from another lady's belly." And so that was it to him. That's how simple it was.
Thanks, Adele. And part of your answer cut out, and so I may have you circle back in a little bit, because I love that you brought up that he didn't really start asking questions until he was about 4 or 5. But that's really, I just really appreciate that, and I love the element too that you brought in about how he talks about it. So I definitely want to get to elaborate more on that later. But so Wendy, would you give us a little sampling of what it's like to turn an adoption story into a bedtime story?
Sure. So I kind of say a little differently every time, depending on the situation. But I think when she was a newborn, I just started by telling her the story that mommy and daddy, tried for a long time to be a mommy and daddy, and we couldn't. And that we just prayed to God and, asked for him to give us a baby. And then we got a call. We were getting ready for church one morning because Sarah was a drop in the lap, which we kind of had prayed for, and because we were ready to go. And we just say, we got that call. We were getting ready for church, and we just dropped everything. And our friend so-and-so took us to the airport, and we got to you right before midnight on your birthday. And I said, we so wanted to go see you first thing, but you know what we did? We went to your tummy mommy. We call her her tummy mommy because she understands that better. And we did the same thing for Benjamin. We went to see your tummy mommy first because, she's the one who picked us for you. She chose us out of all the families that she had been exposed to. She chose us to be your mommy and daddy. And so I just say, we went to her room. We hugged, we cried, we prayed with her. We spent about 30 minutes or so with her, and we just made sure she had everything that she needed. And then I said, we went to the nursery, and we walked by the window, and we saw you there in the crib, and you were the most beautiful baby we've ever seen. And then we got knocked on the door, and one thing after another, we finally got to hold you. And I just tell her, how we felt, and that she was so loved, and that we had to wait a little bit to bring her home because she was an out-of-state adoption, and she flew on an airplane when she was 3.5 weeks old, and she slept the whole way. She didn't cry once. She was such a good baby. And then we finally got to go to our forever home, and and we just go from there. And every once in a while, I'll think of something else to throw in, but it just depends on what she wants to hear now. And actually, last night she asked for that to be her bedtime story. Mommy, tell me about the day I was born. So, and we do the same thing with Benjamin. You know, we just tell him what it was like. We were able to be in the hospital with Benjamin's birth mom for his birth, and so that's a little bit of a different story. But that's basically what we do.
And I love that you brought that up, that she loves to hear about when she was born, because I think back to, I mean, I was not adopted, but I think every child loves to hear the story of when they came into their family, when they came into this world, and that certainly I think that that opens up an opportunity to make sure that adoption is part of that story. It's not just, you know, just some of the details, leaving out the fact that there was an adoption that connected you guys, but that's something she loves to hear. I could just picture her just kind of looking at you like, tell me again, because how special would that feel for your mother who loves you so much to just tell you about that moment. I can't think of any mom, whether she became a mom through adoption or biologically, every mother I've ever met loves to tell the story of when they met their child. So very good. And Adele, you had shared with me, I wanted to make sure we talked about this while we were on the topic of how you bring it up as a newborn, but you actually sent me a picture this morning too of these blocks. Can you tell us about the little baby blocks that you used when Hayes was a baby?
Oh yes, those little blocks. I sent you a picture. I don't know if you can post it. They sell them on Amazon. They're little cushiony picture blocks, and so on all there's 6 sides, and you can put little pictures of everybody. So we had a couple of sets of them, and I had everyone in the family in our family's picture in there, and also his grandparents, his biological grandparents in California, and his aunt and her little boy. His birth mother, she had a closed adoption. We didn't have anything of her, but only her parents and her sister wanted to. They stayed in contact with us and still do. But so anyway, that was one way. You know, when Hayes was little, I could just say, find Grammy in the block. So, you know, let's find Grammy. This is Grammy. And so that way he still, even though they weren't part of his lives, because we do live so far away, they weren't part of his life, he still recognizes them. He recognizes them from the pictures that we have. And we do stay in contact with his grandparents there. Hayes talks to them, and we text through them, and we send videos and stuff like that. But that's one way to kind of be able to keep the birth mother or any other siblings. I mean, your birth mother may have siblings that your child's siblings, and that's just one kind of way to where they'll always know who they were. It's not anything you have to all of a sudden throw on them one day.
Mm-hmm. And that, I love that ties in, and you sent a few pictures. I brought up one of the books here, but I want to go back to one of these questions that we got earlier. Pop this up so I can read it. And it talked about our daughter is 6 weeks old, and she has a biological sister that I'm praying for at one point they will have a relationship together. How and when is the best time and way to tell her about her sibling? And what you just mentioned is just so beautiful, that it doesn't have to be this major conversation, but that you introduce these faces. Even if there's a closed adoption, he's still going to grow up knowing the faces in his story, even though you don't have contact with them all the time or maybe at all.
Right.
And so I hope that kind of gives a helpful answer to this question too. What about those biological siblings, and introducing those parts of their story? But what about these little storybooks that you sent me images of? When did you start introducing these children's books?
We did those pretty quickly. I don't remember about what timeline, because we had some also when he was newborn that we flipped through, you know, the little thick cardboard books that are only just a few sentences. You can get those. You can get them actually personalized. They have them on Etsy. And now I had found some websites while I was looking, but you could just put Google personalized adoption storybooks, and you can kind of, there's different ways about the birth mother and everything. And we had those when Hayes was little. We would read through those little books because he could chew on them, and they put everything in their mouth. And these other books that I sent you, those were my favorites that we still read. Not so much the one with the little girl on the cover, but it says "Tell Me About the Night You Were Born," because he doesn't like that one because it's about a girl, but it's a good book. It's still a really good book to start a conversation because every page starts with "Tell me about this," or "Tell me again about this." So that I put that on there because it's a great conversation starter for someone who's kind of iffy about how to start a conversation, and it makes it so simple. But now the other two books, I challenge anyone to read through those books with their child and not cry, because I still, at first I would boo-hoo with Hayes, and now I just still get choked up, but they're beautiful, and both of them, especially the We Wished for You. It's the little bear has a different color fur than his mom, and he asked about that. He says, "Why is my fur different?" And Hayes is, he's like a white blonde. And
Right.
I'm brunette, and so we don't look alike. But there's other families who the children are African American, and the parent, so their skin is not the same. But that book, it explains it so beautifully. It's a wonderful book to have. And I saw that you can also personalize that book now. It can say, "I wished for you, Hayes," or your child's name. But those two books right there were our favorite.
Awesome, and we will be adding these to a library. So, and Wendy, do you have books that stand out to you?
I have to laugh because I second Adele. The 3 books she chose are the exact same 3 that I chose.
Oh, awesome!
And I can't read the latter 2 either without tears in my eyes. And we took each child's birth pictures, from the hospital, and then up through their adoption in the court, their finalization, and just family, and we created a book for each of them. And those books, boy, do they cherish those books. Those are our favorite books. So, just make it your own, and just Sarah looks at that book all the time. She loves that book. So,
like
but
a book for Shutterfly, or
you just those are great conversation starters too. And I was reading those books to Sarah when she was maybe 6 months old, and I just started reading to both of my kids at a very young age, even though I knew they may not understand what I was saying.
And I know with certainty. I mean, one of the things that I hear is sometimes parents who adopt a child who looks very similar to them might think, I don't need to talk about adoption either at all or early on, that maybe for some reason they think it'll be something that can come up later when that child is filling out their own medical records or something. I'm never quite sure of some of the rationale. There's just different reasons that people procrastinate telling a child about their own adoption story. But I know when a child grows up, even like Adele said, I love that you brought that up. He has blonde hair, and you have very dark brunette hair. But Wendy, certainly in your family, I mean, you adopted Sarah, who's African American, and you and Glenn are Caucasian, and so you can't even avoid a conversation about why are we different? How did I come into this family? And so can we talk a little bit about that, about how you answer some of those questions, like, why do I look different than my mom and dad? Because I think that sometimes that question that could come from the child makes some adoptive parents nervous about keeping that conversation open, even though I would tend to think that that very question would give you an absolute reason to talk about it from the very start. Right. So, Wendy, let's start with you, since you have a transracial adoption in your family. And then Adele, I still want you to go back and talk about that again, because I think it's important that even within a Caucasian adoption to a Caucasian family, there's still differences that come up like that. So let's talk a little bit about some of these obvious what if my child asks me why I look different than you?
Sure. And I would just have to say, you know, a 2 or a 3-year-old, their attention span is really short, even a 4 or 5-year-old. So, and they're just wanting to know. They don't need this big explanation. They just want to know. And then as soon as they've asked you and you've answered, they're on to something else usually. So we're not there yet. Maybe Adele is there a little bit more because her son is older. But, you know, Sarah started pointing to her skin and my skin. She was around maybe 2 or 3. And we always just tell her that God loves a variety of colors. And sometimes I even read to her in the Bible about that. And that, you know, he just loves her very much. And that God chose her to be in our family. And, you know, for the longest time that was okay. And then within the last year, you know, she gets pretty emotional about it. And Glenn was sharing with me last night, which I wasn't even aware of, which I don't know how. I'm home with her all day, every day. But she asked him, well, when is my skin going to turn the color of your mommy and Benjamin's skin? Oh. And so then we just, you know, and she's obviously upset. What I just do with her is I say, let's just stop and pray. Let's pray and ask God to give you comfort and to give mommy, you know, just the right words that you need to hear right now. And we do that a lot. So, you know, and then we talk about it, and then like I said, she's like, okay, and then she's on to something else. And so that's pretty much been our experiences. I always tell her, you know, God does not get addresses wrong. He doesn't make mistakes. He gave us to you for a reason. And, you know, we wouldn't have it any other way. And we love you very much, and we're never going to stop loving you. And so I just think sometimes she needs that reassurance because, you know, her brother is a different color, and he's the same color as we are. And we also remind her, I said, you know, you're telling me mommy picked us. She didn't pick any other family. She picked us to be your mommy and daddy. And so I think that gives her comfort knowing that her tummy mommy, you know, made that decision as well. So anyway, that's how we do it.
I really appreciate you said that it's really sort of stage by stage. It's not like at 5 years old that you need to introduce her to racial relations and this whole giant thesis, you know, that right. might be something that she's interested in when she's older. Or, you know, you might find that the conversations you're having now, some children, that's enough for them, and they don't want to dig a lot deeper into understanding that. But then there are other children who feel a deep need to really kind of circle around and really understand God's purpose in their life and why this was the family chosen for them. And that doesn't mean that she's going to be insecure, but she may just have a need for a deeper level of understanding. While I know even within Marty's own adoption stories that her son has told her, you know, I'm not as interested as you are in my birth history. Like, I don't need as much information, but her daughter has. So every child is different. And I love that you said that it's really just something you kind of take as it comes, and that you're not afraid to say, I'm not sure how to answer that for you. Let's seek wisdom, or let's talk about it, or let's pray together. I think that's probably wise parenting advice across the board. But Adele, I want to bring up this beautiful picture of your family so that people can see that even though you all share race in common, you don't look matched. You know what I mean? Like, you're not matching
right.
that.
Hayes does not look like us. Yes. He doesn't look anything like me. He looked a little bit more like Chris when Chris had blonde hair before he turned gray, but he does not look like me at all.
And you mentioned that when he was in kindergarten, he started asking about his birth mother. And then you actually shared something with me that I was hoping we could just touch on briefly too, which was as recently as a couple weeks ago, you were just talking about the story of Jesus's birth because you had seen that cute movie, The Star, and that it wasn't until very recently that he actually asked questions about, or just even brought up the subject of his own birth father. So can you talk about having walked through that stage at kindergarten where he's asking about his birth mother, and now, you know, he's a much older child, and now the questions about the birth father are just starting to come out. So how do you how do you handle those answers and keep that conversation open?
Okay, right. Well, it's like Wendy said, their attention span is, and this is one thing if you take away from this webinar, anyone out there who's struggling with this, it is going to be so much easier to tell a little boy or a little girl their birth story than to tell a hormonal teenager, or where that whose thinking is so much more deeper than a little 5-year-old or 4-year-old, or even with Hayes, he's 9 now, but back to that, but it's just a whole lot easier because they just don't think about all the other stuff. But he asked about his birth mother just kind of out of the blue when he was in the first grade. It came up out of the blue. He said, "What is my mom's name?" And I guess we just hadn't talked about it in a while. And we were driving down the road, and he just asked me, and I said, "Well, yeah, her name is Jennifer," just like in nothing else. Just I didn't react like shocked or anything. I didn't want him to feel embarrassed at all about asking about her or anything like that. I said, "Her name is Jennifer, and she works for a veterinarian," and I just went on to tell him everything that I knew about her. And um, I said she was so excited that you were going to be living on a farm because she loves horses and, just all the things about the farm life and everything. I said, "Son, I'm so glad she picked us to raise you because she was so scared that she couldn't give you a happy life that she wanted you to have. So she picked me and Daddy out of all the people to raise you on this farm and raise you with our family and love you." I said, "And just imagine if she wouldn't have picked you, you wouldn't know Grammy and Bailey, I just named people." And he said, "That would be weird." And that was kind of the end of it. Like, that was, well, it was just, and then we just went on. He was just like, "That would be so weird." And then just a couple of weeks ago, we had the conversation of a birth father had never really come up because I guess he never realized it takes a man to have a baby too. What that
You
means.
cut
But
out again.
oh, am I cutting out again?
So you said that he had never kind of pieced together that it takes a daddy to make a baby.
Right. He had never pieced that together, and then I was kind of worried about it a little bit because he's too young for the birds and the bees talk. But anyway, just the other day when we were talking about the star, I said, Joseph adopted Jesus. He is his earthly father, but God is his father. And he said, "Mama," like it occurred to him, "Mama, who's my real daddy?" And I said, "Well, son," and we were in a cow pasture waiting for Chris to get back with a cow. I said, "Well, we really don't know anything about him because your birth mother never told us anything about him." I said, "I don't really know much at all about him. You do know that if I knew anything, I would tell you everything I know, but the only thing I know is that he lived in Kentucky." I said, that's it. I said, "If you ever want to learn more about him, we'll try to do that." And I said, um, "If you ever want to find him, we can cross that bridge when we get there. We'll try to do that." I said, "Do you think you're ever going to want to look for your birth father?" Just kind of curious. And he said, "I don't know. Do you reckon that cow over there is about to have her baby?" And I said, "Well, son, I don't know. We'll just ask Daddy when he gets back." And seriously, that's about how deep it goes, with a 9-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Which you made a
So,
comment. I think sometimes hopeful adoptive parents, and Wendy, I would love if you chimed in on this too. I think sometimes before you adopt, there's this idea of, is my child ever going to inherit things from me? Since you're not going to have those genes to look like grandma or look like cousin so-and-so or look like mom or dad necessarily. that, you know, will my child ever have things that are like me? And Adele, I mean, you mentioned that, I mean, we showed the photo of him with the horse, and I know you have posted videos before of him pretending to be a rodeo.
Yes. He's
play
a bull
rodeo,
rider.
even with a trash can. Yeah, bull riding, and
He's a living room bull rider. Yes, ma'am.
and that he learns, like, because he lives on this farm, that he is learning from his dad, you know, from Daddy Chris, that this lifestyle of living on a farm with horses and cattle, and he'll grow up, and there's no other way he could have gotten that. I mean, that's all you guys. And so, I mean, did you ever go through that fear before? Because I think that sometimes that is also what holds people back from wanting to talk about adoption with their child, is because they want so much for their child to know how much they belong and are like the family that they're growing up in, that they don't want to bring up this birth history or talk about this other side of their story, because they don't want them to feel like a split devotion or a split loyalty or be confused. But I mean, do you remember walking through any of those fears, and then now that you're 9 years deep into parenthood, how those have been squashed at all?
I don't think I was really scared about where we were gonna, you know, well, because we didn't know where our child was even coming from until we didn't get matched up until a month before he was born, and he was coming from Sacramento. But no, I wasn't scared about anything like that. I do think this kind of baffles my mind, and I'm sure it's with.
Oh,
Are you still there?
baffles, yeah, baffles your mind.
I'm sure it baffles my mind when I think, okay, Jennifer, his birth mother, had her choices narrowed down to basically three couples. This is what her sister told us. Um, and she chose us. And just in that choice, she chose our destiny and Hayes's. So I think, what if she'd have chose this couple in the city? This little country boy would have been living in a city, but I can't imagine him. I can't imagine that little boy living on concrete. But not that there's anything wrong with it, because I grew up in the city. I was so far from a country boy that I wouldn't even know what they looked like. But I don't know. It's a God thing, and I honestly believe that, because I just I can't imagine Chris having grown up in a city, and I can't imagine Hayes having grown up in a city. So that's kind of that thing. But no, I wasn't ever really scared of that. I guess I didn't think about it that much, but
Yeah,
what if I
thank
had
you.
a little boy who hates the country, you know? But I didn't. I guess I never thought about that, because we love where we live. But
Hmm.
but yeah,
Well, that's just one
God
aspect of
knew
how
what he
he's
was.
like you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
God knew what he was doing. Just like Wendy said, he doesn't get the addresses wrong.
right. So Wendy, one of the things that there are two photos that stand out, because it's just always been very apparent that you and Glenn have been open about your family's adoption story from the start. One of them was as recent as this last fall, when we had National Adoption Awareness Month, and you joined in on this social media trend where you put a smiley face on your hand and post a picture to show adoption as part of your life, and you support adoption. So, I mean, you shared those very personal questions that Sarah's moved through. And then I wonder too, because sometimes we've helped adopted parents where they've been, I don't know what the right word is, but sometimes they want two identical adoption stories, because if one child has more openness or less openness or a different kind of story or whatever it means, they get a little bit nervous about, well, how do I tell one story to one child and a totally different story to the other child, and still teach them that they're both very special and both very accepted and very much a part of our family. And so I would just love if you would talk about how you've created this culture in your family of just truly embracing adoption just across the board. And then, of course, how introducing that second adoption maybe even opened up a new conversation.
Sure. Yeah, I just, honesty. I think Glenn and I have always just agreed, we have to just be honest. And both of our Sarah and Benjamin's birth moms wanted closed adoptions. But it just so happened that, we let Sarah's birth mom, Joanne, we said we're going to be here for this amount of days, and she didn't have any transportation. We took her anywhere she needed. We got her anything she needed. We took her to and from the social worker when she signed the papers to terminate. We got to know her, and she completely changed her mind and said, I would love to have an open adoption. But it's kind of, that way. And then Ben's birth mom was the same way. She didn't even want to tell us to tell Benjamin he was adopted, and I said, we can't do that. We're going to start telling him from day one. So they both kind of have, and then she opened up, and now, pictures go back and forth with both of their birth moms, and we have an open adoption. They still just really want to wait till the kids are at least graduated from high school before they try to attempt to contact them. And so, Sarah is just under the impression that mommy and daddy get grandma and grandpa to come over and watch her, and they spend the night, and then mommy and daddy go to the hospital and get another baby. I mean, the other day she asked me, and she said, can grandma and grandpa come over so you can go and get me a baby sister? So she just knows that, babies, that's what she thinks. And so we haven't seen that yet, any differences in feelings. Sarah kind of asked more questions around that time. And when we finalized Benjamin's adoption in the courthouse, she's like, well, what about me? Because, she was young, she didn't remember that. So we got out her book and we just went through that with her again. And she's completely fine with it, I guess because they're so similar, and they're still young. We
Right.
don't have that. We don't have that in our family. So.
Mm-hmm. But still, like you said, going back to where we started, that you talk with each child about their entrance into this world and into your family as if it's a bedtime story, and they're just growing up knowing that, and that you have these different names on either side. That I'm sure will just continue to come into play, just like Adele was saying, with introducing these faces and connecting the dots with names and who these people are to them. I hope what everyone's hearing today between Adele and Wendy's answers is just that it doesn't have to be a complicated, involved, wait for the perfect moment kind of talk. That if you just are honest, like you said, Wendy, and out of that place of love for your child and for your family story and for that choice on the other side, like Adele, I loved what you were saying about how she chose you and Chris because she loved horses and she loved that lifestyle and she wanted to give that to her child. I mean, what a special part of being able to tell that story, that she had such a intentional choice in the plan she made for her son. So thank you both so much. And I know we're coming to the end of our hour too, so I just wanted to make sure that I also checked the audience for any questions. Let me see here. I think we did talk about this great question. Do either of you include the birth mother in the conversations? I think both of you were pretty candid about that. Adele, I would love, because I know you have a visit coming up very soon with part of Hayes's birth family. So has that opened up any new conversations for you guys? Adele is muted. Unmute yourself, Adele.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There she is. Yes, we can. There you are. Good.
I'm sorry. Yeah, his grandparents from California are coming in a couple of months to our house to spend a few days. We've been saying we would get together, and circumstances have just kept them from getting back together. So they haven't seen him since he was born. So they're coming a month after next to visit with us, and we're just excited. Hayes is excited. We text back and forth, and he sends videos and stuff like that. And his grandmother has sent him gifts every holiday. Well, so we still have a relationship with them, but now he has not seen them since he was born. So I'm nervous about it. Chris really has to do a lot of yard work before then, but we're just very excited, and we with them coming, we're talking more about it now, but he doesn't ask a lot of questions, and it's not any deep questions because to us it's a thing, but to a child who's known all his life, it's really not a big deal, and that's kind of, I don't want to be nonchalant about it, but that's kind of why, if you can tell them when they're little, and it's just not that life altering, thing, like if you wait until they're 40 or 30 or 20 or something. But yeah, he's excited, but he's it's just like family coming, any other company coming.
Yeah. Well, because like you said earlier, that it would be even harder to tell a teenager or a 20 or 30-year-old who would have a totally different processing level just because of their maturity and developmental age. So if you introduce it from the beginning, like you said, it's just a part of his family. It's just a part of his story. Wonderful. We're getting lots of comments. So thank you both for sharing today. We really appreciate this. And I feel like in a way it's such a simple topic because it doesn't have to be complicated. But that I know that in a way there's so much more that we could get into. And of course, I think every family needs to prepare for the fact that you may have a child with unique questions, or maybe you adopt a child when they are 2 years old and the story is not about going to the hospital or meeting them at birth. And so I think that if you take the tips that you heard from Wendy and Adele and apply that from just the beginning of when your family came together, that you go through each stage as age appropriate, but also knowing that it's okay to have questions about how to answer certain topics. Who knows what's around the corner for each of these moms, but that it's not something, what I love hearing in both of you, Wendy and Adele, is just you may be nervous about questions you don't know how to answer, but what parent isn't? I mean, there's all kinds of big questions in this world that children are going to process. So I think when you just know that you are letting your child know you can talk about it, it's just that openness, that comfort of I'm not going to be shocked by your questions, but I'm going to try and be there for you and talk about what I do know and help you find out what we don't know. So is there anything either of you want to add before we wrap up today?
It's Wendy. I just was thinking another thing that I do to comfort Sarah, because obviously our skin colors are different, is I point out to her all of our similarities, because really the only thing that's different about us is our skin color. And I say, look, you and mommy have the same hands. We each have 5 fingers. We have, we look at our faces and we smile and make silly faces. And that really helps her kind of relax about it. And so that's just one more thing that I really wanted to put out there.
And
I'm sorry, Adele. I was just going to add to that. There was a great comment earlier, Wendy, when you were sharing about the questions Sarah's been having about her skin color, that just said, I like to make sure that my child knows that her brown skin is just as beautiful as my white skin, so that there's not this well, why is my skin different, and suddenly it seems like one is better than the other or something, but that they're both beautiful. And I think, Wendy, you've explained fully today that that's part of your conversation, is where you are similar, and that's really just one difference you share, but then to look at all the other beautiful ways that you're the same, and that one is not better than the other too. I think, again, it's just that openness, being honest with your child and being willing to look them in the eye and be present and to hear them, and not make it like it's a shocking question or like it's a topic that's off the table. So awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that comment in the audience too. So Adele, I'm sorry, what were you going to add to this? I definitely want to hear that.
I forgot. I forgot what I was going to say.
Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up?
I'm sure anything it was totally earth-shattering or life-changing or something, but I totally forgot. I don't even remember what I was going to say. I just know that when I do tell Hayes about his story, it is always very exciting. It has always been something that's been exciting, and it was answered prayers. He always knows how hard he was prayed for by so many people, and and it was just it was the most exciting thing that has ever happened to me or Chris. So, you know, it's kind of like, why wouldn't you want to tell them? That's always been my thing. That was too good a secret. That would have been way too good a secret. So I couldn't wait to tell them. I can't wait to tell anybody who asks about it. It's my favorite story in the whole world. So I guess if you kind of think of it like that, it's it's the best thing. You want to tell him. It makes him special. He's special.
Yeah, you're so proud of how your family came together that why wouldn't you want to give those answers to your child? And I also think a lot of it has to do with you're also equipping your child to be confident in how they're going to answer questions from others as they get older and have relationships outside of their immediate family, on how they're going to talk about adoption and understand their story, even if they're not sharing all the details with everyone. But there will be those questions of, you know, basically, what is adoption, or what does it mean to you, or tell me more about what adoption looks like in your family or something, and that you're equipping them to know that it's okay to talk about. And like you said, not a secret. It's too good a secret to keep. I love that.
It's too good a secret, and it teach them that it is something to be so proud of. I mean, it is. You wear it. I mean, you are adopted. That's a big deal. You just be proud of that. One of Hayes' little friends, I told you this the other day, his brother had come over to the house and they were arguing, and the brother said to his brother, he said, "You're adopted." And Hayes said, "Me too." Like, you know, he was so excited. He thought his little friend was adopted too, but it was kind of a, you know, I had to sit down and have a talk with them. I said, "Yeah, Hayes is adopted. We love that Hayes is adopted." I said, "You shouldn't even say that. That's an ugly thing. I don't know where you got that, because that is an awesome thing to be adopted. Look how awesome Hayes is." You know? So Hayes is super proud when somebody says they're adopted, or he hears the word California. He is all about some California adoption going on.
Wendy, you just typed something to me, and I would love if you would just add that, because I think this is such a great thing.
Sure. You know, we celebrate their birthdays every year, but we also celebrate the court date that they got our last name. And so their adoption day, both of them. And then we also celebrate National Adoption Day every November. So there's all these celebrations, and we're just going to keep doing it until they tell us to stop. I mean, it's just a celebration. And so, you know, it's just important to us. And then that helps our family just stay involved as well. And it shows our friends and family, you know, it just helps them to learn about adoption too.
Yeah, awesome. I love that there's always a celebration going on. So really, I mean, in this day and age, especially with social media, there are a lot of excuses to celebrate adoption, to just bring it up in the home, but also, like you said, to give you an opportunity to show others that it's not something you're hiding, that you're proud of how your story came together. So, Wendy and Adele, thank you so much. I don't want to keep you too much longer, because I know you've got little ones coming home from school soon, or nap times that'll wrap up. But I just want to encourage all of you who listen today, we would love your feedback or questions. You can always tell your coordinator if you have a question, or just want to let her know how you appreciated this webinar or anything you learned. But also that we will continue to try and put out resources that make it easy and familiar and fun for you to talk about adoption with your kids. So we'll try and add some of these books to the library, recommended library soon. But we just want to thank all of you for taking time out of your morning and middle of your day to join us. And we'll look forward to meeting with you again very soon for another live webinar. So Kim, I think you're still on there, but is there anything you need to add? And you've been carefully monitoring the questions, which I appreciate.
Yes,
is there anything
such
that's
great
stuck out in there you
questions
need to make sure we add?
No, I mean, Adele and Wendy, thank you so much for taking your precious time and your precious experiences and sharing those with us. And also, I just love how woven throughout everything we discussed today, that faith and God's attention to detail in each of our lives is just so you know, he has that. He has us all in his hands, and he has an intention for all of us, and how beautifully all of your stories have come together, and how he gives you those words. When you ask for wisdom, he gives it and is able to help you explain things to your children and answer questions as they arise. And I just love how both of you shared it with us today. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, we will meet with all of you again soon. Have a great afternoon and a good weekend. And thanks again. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.